أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: إنما يعمر مساجد الله من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة ولم يخش إلا الله فعسى أولئك أن يكونوا من المهتدين. صدق الله العظيم. My dear brothers and sisters, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that has blessed us, the one that has blessed us with blessing after blessing, the one that has given us so much. All the things that a human being desires, all the things which a human being needs, we have been blessed with, and more. And it's important for us to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to realize that when we make our salah, that every time we say Allahu Akbar, that is a word of gratitude. That Allah, you are great. Allah, you are the one that has done so much for me, for my family, for my life. I'm grateful to you. We live in an age of ingratitude. We live in an age where everyone is always looking at what the other person has. Now we have access on our phones to what 8 billion other people are doing and what they have. And we are living in an age of ingratitude. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in gratitude. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah, in the month of Ramadan, we felt this amazing community. The masjid was full till the back, and we filled a tent, and we filled the street in front of the masjid. in Ramadan and on Eid and so on. And the masjid was full. And we felt a sense of community, a sense of camaraderie, a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, standing shoulder to shoulder, night after night, from 9 p.m. or earlier until Fajr, subhanAllah. People were here filling the masjid. And that was a beautiful sight to behold. And that was a beautiful thing to be a part of. And many of us, we are sad now that when you come to the masjid in the evening or whenever, you get a row or half a row, and the masjid is empty. And so how do we reconcile that? What is the purpose of the masjid truly? What is the point of the masjid in this day and age? What is the value that the masjid adds to our life? What must we realize? And how can we make the masjid a part of our life? And so for us to do that, let us first think about how the masjid is used in the Quran. And so I will talk a little bit about how the Quran talks about the masjid, or the place of worship. Because it's important for us to establish what is the point of the masjid today, in this day and age. Is it a relic from the past? Is it something that we only utilize in Ramadan and marriages and funerals? Or is it something more? Is the masjid something more? Can it be something more? Should it be something more? That is what I'd like to talk about today. The first verse I'd like to look at talks about the establishing of the masjid. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quraysh, they were the caretakers of the Kaaba. The Quraysh, they were the caretakers of the Kaaba. They took on the responsibility of hospitality and giving drink and giving water to everyone who made pilgrimage to Mecca. And the Quraysh had taken on that responsibility. And in particular, the clan of the Prophet ﷺ was responsible for the Zamzam, the Banu Hashim. And so you had this tradition amongst the Quraysh of taking care of the Kaaba and taking care of the people who came to the Kaaba, even though they were mushrikun, even though they were polytheists, and the Kaaba was full of idols. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses that. And He says that the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Masajid Allah, the word masjid comes from sujud, which means to prostrate. And the masjid is the place where you prostrate. The Masajid of Allah, these places of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are established by the ones who believe in Allah and the last day. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ, and they establish the prayer. وَآتَ الزَّكَاةِ, and they give the zakat. وَلَمْ يَخْشَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and they do not revere, and they are not awe-inspired by anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah criticizes the Quraysh. أَجَعَلْتُمْ سِقَايَةَ الْحَجِّ وَإِمَارَةَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ كَمَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Have you made equivalent, have you made equal the one who is hospitable towards the visitors of the Kaaba to the ones who actually believe in Allah in the last day? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes this idea that we only care about the superficial taking care of the masjid in that sense, versus the one who actually believes, the one who actually believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who establishes the prayer in their life, the one who gives in charity and cares about those around them, and the one who has that awe-inspired nature within their heart for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who is awe-inspired and reveres Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the ones who come to the masjid. And He praises الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those who believe and migrate and struggle in the path of Allah with their wealth and themselves. They have a greater أَعْظَمُ دَرَجَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. They have a greater level with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's one thing to believe, it's another It's another to struggle in the path of Allah with your wealth and yourselves. That's another level. And when we are pursuing paradise and we're pursuing the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's important for us to think about what are the levels that I can pursue. And the levels that I pursue are not just good for me here, but especially in the akhirah. And not just in the akhirah, but they are even in the dunya. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ. Those are the people who are truly successful. يُبَشِّرُهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِرَحْمَةٍ مِّنْهُ. They will receive mercy from Allah. وَرِضْوَانٍ. And pleasure, Allah's pleasure. وَجَنَّاتٍ. And the order is very important. The mercy of Allah comes first. The pleasure of Allah comes second. And the Jannat and the paradise, it comes third. لَهُمْ فِيهَا نَعِيمٌ مُقِيمٌ. And they will have something, an ongoing blessings in paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the people of paradise. And so are we pursuing these levels, and I will talk more about this, are we pursuing these levels when it comes to how we care for our masjid, how we pursue our community, how we bring our community together? Are we pursuing these levels? Are we pursuing these levels? Are we someone who just comes and takes a little bit away but does not give back? Are we givers in the relationship with the masjid, or are we receivers in terms of our relationship with the masjid? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he always encouraged us to be givers and not to be receivers in any relationship, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your children, whether it's your parents, whether it's your grandparents, whether it's your friends, whether it's your masjid, whether it's your community. Are you a receiver or are you a giver? When you are a giver, you inevitably will scale those levels to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another way in which the masjid is used, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds about the direction of the qibla. And the qibla is such a beautiful thing that no matter where you are in the world, every single one of us, we make Allahu Akbar, we say Allahu Akbar, we say our takbir, and we face in the same direction. We face in the same direction. There is an organization to it, there's a unity to it, there's a beauty to it. That people who come to the masjid for the first time, people who've converted to Islam, and I asked them, what is it that you see in the masjid? What is it that attracted you? He said, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. I said, what is? The unity. That we're all facing the same direction, no matter where we are in the world, and that's a beautiful thing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the importance of the qibla in Surah Al-Baqarah. Next we have, in the Quran, Allah mentions the prohibition of fighting around the sacred areas of the masjid, in particular the Masjid al-Haram. And so when we are in the masjid, we have a sense of peace, a sense of, let me leave my baggage outside the doors. This is a sacred place. This is a place not for argumentation and debate. This is a place of peace and serenity and security, both internally and externally. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also associates the masajid with justice. قُلْ أَمَرَ رَبِّي بِالْقِسْطِ. Say that my Lord has commanded justice. وَأَقِيمُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. And stand straight in prayer in every single masjid. So the justice is connected to the masjid. If we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's masjid, it was not just a place for prayer. It was a place where worship in its full meaning was established. Worship in its full meaning was established in the masjid of the Prophet, peace be upon him. People would bring their conflicts and have them resolved. People would solve the problems of their society. If they were under attack by some external force, they would come to the masjid and they would talk about what it is that needs to be done to defend themselves. All of those things would take place in the masjid. Justice is associated with the masjid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then talks about the beauty that we should bring to the masjid. Ya bani Adam, khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid. O children of Adam, tying us all together. Khudhu zinatakum, bring beauty to the masjid. What is beauty? Beauty is something external. Zina is something external. Zina is something external that you adorn yourself, you beautify yourself. You don't bring the bare minimum to the masjid. You don't bring the bare minimum to the masjid. You say, I'm getting ready to go to the masjid. Let me do something a little more to fulfill this command of Allah. خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. I get a common complaint. Brothers, you're about to hear some feedback. Get ready. I hear a common complaint. I'm only going to say this once a year. The uncles, they come and they complain to me. The aunties, they come and they complain to me. And I say, I will make this announcement once a year and no more than that. Is that when we make sujood, brothers in particular, when you make sujood and your clothes is too short, then we get a lot of vision that we don't, things that we don't want to see, my brothers, especially. Okay, and I know there's lots of things that can be said, but this is something that I hear all the time. And I will say it just once a year, khalas. Right? And I'm not going to say it after this. And I don't want people to enforce it. I don't want you to go and find all the people that are doing this and to shout at them. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to be aware of our clothing when we come to the masjid. At least to that level. And to remember what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, to raise the level of our adornment. خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. And your zina and your adornment, that's different from, the word is yanun, zina. Right? The word is from zina, which means adornment, beauty. Bring beauty to the masjid. Not only externally, that's part of it, but internally as well. You come to the masjid, how are you bringing beauty? This is something we see in the Prophet ﷺ as well. He would be very cognizant of what he ate before he came to the masjid. He would be cognizant about how he treated others in the masjid. The Sahaba were cognizant how others would be treated, how others would be welcomed when they came to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So beauty is commanded in the masjid. In a beautiful verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about two types of masjids in Surah At-Tawbah. And Surah At-Tawbah talks about the masjid a lot. And Surah At-Tawbah is a verse revealed after battle. But it talks about the masjid a lot. A lot of the verses I've mentioned are from Surah At-Tawbah. And Allah talks about one masjid established to create division and one masjid established on taqwa. وَلَمَسْجِدٌ أُسِّسَ عَلَى التَّقْوَى. The one that is established on the consciousness, on the mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مِنْ أَوَّلِ يَوْمٍ أَحَقُّ أَن تَقُومَ فِيهِ فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُطَّهِّرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the masjid you will find people who want to purify themselves. In the masjid you will find people who want to purify themselves. And what is purity? Purity is not just external. Your mother used to tell you cleanliness is half of faith. Clean your room. For once in your life, clean your room without me having to tell you. Cleanliness is half of faith. But the tahara that the Prophet ﷺ talks about, the tahara that is talked about here, the purity is not an external purity, but it is the purity of the heart. It is the purity of what's inside. You're wondering, how can I purify myself in this world, in my life? Where can I find purity? Where can I find good? Where can I find truth? Where can I find justice? The masjid is where you will find that. You make a habit for the masjid. You try to find ways to bring the masjid into your route, whether it's from work, whether you go to the tulip festival. On your way back, you say, as a family, we're going to pray in the masjid. We missed iqamah, it's okay, we're still going to pray. We're not here for the imam to lead us. We're here because this is the masjid, this is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will come to the masjid and I will seek purity in the house of Allah. How can we bring the house of Allah into our lives? How can we make it a part of our lives? How can we make it so we're passing by, we say to the kids, you know what? I just heard the adhan, let's go and make asr. Let's go and make maghrib. We're passing through. We're passing by. How can we make the masjid a part of our lives and be amongst these people who say that they are at the masjid, فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا. They are people who love to purify themselves. If you love to purify yourself, there's only one place you need to be. There's only one place you need to add to your routine. Whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, there's only one place you need to be. You're feeling stressed, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling insulted, you're feeling harmed, you need clarity of mind and thought, you're about to make a big decision, come to the masjid. You're looking for community, you're looking for people. You're saying, where are the good people in this world? Why do I feel lonely? Why do I feel sad? Why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel like I'm without a community? Where do you need to go? You need to go to the place. In it are people who love to purify themselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us from amongst them. Ameen. The masjid is a place of miracles. Where did the Isra wal Mi'raj take place? It was at the site of Masjid al-Aqsa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to visit it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free it. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Then we have the place of pilgrimage, the Umrah and the Hajj, al-Masjid al-Haram. But you can also, when you go to your local masjid, you're also making a pilgrimage. You're also making a sacrifice. That is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, every step you take towards the masjid is a blessing. Every step. Maybe some of you are thinking, why I drive to the masjid? Well, every turn of your wheel, inshallah. Every turn of your wheel, every drop of gas or electricity or whatever, it's going in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so coming to the masjid is something where every step is, subhanallah, it is rewarded. It is the place of miracles. It is the place of pilgrimage. It is the place, yes, of i'tikaf in Ramadan. وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in Ramadan, making the i'tikaf, staying in the masjid and spending that time, and we did that, alhamdulillah. It is a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is remembered. يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ. That in these masajid of Allah, His name is remembered, of course. Of course, His name is remembered. And His name is remembered in a variety of ways. It could be through the dissemination of knowledge. It could be in many different ways. It is also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, the masjid is a place of safety. Al-Masjid al-Haram, the sacred masjid. The place where things must be, they must be kept sacred. They must be kept safe. You have to leave everything behind when you come to the masjid. It's a place of safety. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it that way. And finally, I'll mention from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ who talked about one of the people who gets his shade out of 7 different groups. One of the people who gets his shade on the day when there is no shade but his is someone قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ. Their heart is connected to the masjid. And that does not mean someone whose heart is connected to the masjid only in Ramadan when the shayateen are chained up. It means someone whose heart is connected to the masjid. Someone who is making time in their life for the masjid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include us amongst those whose hearts are connected to the masjid. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So in my khutbah, I talked about how the Quran talks about what are the principles and the virtues of the masjid within the Quran, within the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now we look at, well, what is our situation today? And what are the needs of the time today? The Prophet ﷺ's masjid solved the problems of his day. So what are the problems that we have today? And how can our masjid be a part of that solution? Number 1, the first solution is personal. Come to the masjid, purify your heart, purify your mind, purify your family. Come to the masjid first and foremost for the betterment of yourself. Before you think about anyone else, you come to the masjid for yourself. Number 2, for our children, we have a great responsibility towards our children. How will they keep their faith? 1/4 of Muslims who were raised in America as Muslim say they are no longer Muslim. And this is reflected amongst Jews and amongst Christians. This is religion in America today. But the amazing thing that with Islam in particular, A quarter of Muslims are converts. So that tells you that a quarter might be saying that we were raised Muslim and we no longer identify, and a quarter are saying now we are newly Muslim. As if there is a replacement happening. SubhanAllah, may Allah protect us. And the last thing we want, that our children are amongst those that will be replaced. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us in the Quran. He tells us in the Quran, in a very scary verse, that you will be replaced. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. This is a promise in the Quran. Allah does not need our worship. He does not need our iman. This is something which we need. So bringing our kids to the masjid more than once a week, very important. Those of us whose kids are in school, bring them to the youth Jumaa, 350. Bring them. Dads, mothers, you have a responsibility to your school-age children. Make sure they are doing Jumaa. Those of you whose kids are in high school, we used to make our own Jumaa at school. How can you facilitate that for your children? How can you get the help of all these relationships that we are building? It's not for photographs. Civic engagement is not for photographs. It's so that we can do something for our kids in their schools and where they go. Number 3, teaching a class, whether it's religious or what people call non-religious. But even something non-religious can become religious. Imagine you teach someone in the masjid something which changes their livelihood, and their heart becomes connected to the masjid as a source of good for the rest of their life, and you did that because you taught them something, whether it was religious or whether it was something else. So how can you teach something? That is something which we want to do more and more in our masjid. Number 4, bringing non-Muslims. There was something which we as a community used to do, which we must revive. We used to do it before COVID very often. And now what we do, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all the volunteers who make it happen, the main program that we do is our interfaith iftar in Ramadan. So we need to have that happen. I want to see that happen on a quarterly, if not more, basis, where we bring people to the masjid, they learn about Islam. That is part of our responsibility, especially because we are seeing Islamophobia back in action more than it was than 9/11. But the difference is that we are better prepared. Alhamdulillah, we just got past the Islamophobia bill a few months ago in the final week of the legislative session. So we are more qualified, we are more ready, and we need to make sure that we use that and we use our talents. Bring non-Muslims to the masjid, bring your neighbor, bring your coworker, bring your colleague, educate them, help them learn. This is something which all of us need to do. Number 5, a mentorship program. We have so many young people graduating now who invested in certain degrees, technology degrees and so on. And why wouldn't they? It's the most booming thing in our location. But a lot of them are finding difficulty in getting into jobs, in growing in their jobs, in getting promotions and so on. We need mentorship both professionally and for our new Muslims, our converts in Islam, and for our younger brothers and sisters, both spiritual and professional mentorship. And both of those go hand in hand. The Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, he started a market. He started the masjid and he started a market. Both of those go hand in hand. They are not separate. Another thing we need to think about is how we are learning and educating ourselves about our deen. Inshallah, in the fall, we want to start the Pacific Northwest Seminary program here at the masjid. And for that, we will be needing a lot of, it's going to be a big operation, inshallah. If you're interested in being part of that, please let me know. I would love to have you on the team to make that happen and to make it a big success, inshallah, and an example for the others around the country. One of the centers which we have talked to a lot because they're bigger than us is Adams Center in Virginia. And I saw they're starting a youth seminary program. And I said, actually, we started that 3 years ago. We already have that. And here's what we have. And I showed them everything that we were doing. And they were able to take from that. So it's something which we want to be the role models. We want to be the ones that are at the forefront. And this is something which we can do, inshallah, and that is possible. And finally, and I'll end off with this, it's not just about the knowledge. It's not just about the things that we can do for each other, but it's also about finding community. And the final ask that I have is how can we create community at the masjid? How can we make sure that we are doing consistent socials, meeting new people, giving salam to each other, the people we know, the people we don't know? How can we make sure there's more sports activities, health-related activities, where people can come here and not only do they get the spiritual boost, but they get physical fitness, they get emotional fitness, whatever it might be. We can help them from their whole in a holistic way, which was the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to have a strong masjid, inshaAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be strong so we can help those that are weak. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be strong so that we can help those who need our help. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be a strong community, united community, pure community. Strong community, not just physically, not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally, politically, in all ways. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us strong so that we can help our brothers and sisters in Gaza, because it's our tax dollars going there. The taxes we just filed, they are going there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen us so that we can help them. May we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us from those who follow the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and emulate the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. اذكروا الله يذكركم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Straighten your robes, fill in the gaps, shoulder to shoulder. Move to the right, make space for everyone. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله 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 أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Allah. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله. الله أكبر. الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, I mentioned quite a few ways in which you can get involved, and we'll display the QR code. Brother Ahmad, if you can make sure the QR code is displayed there for volunteering, inshallah, you can scan it to volunteer. There's a dua request for Sister Amna Khatun, who passed away in India, grandmother to one of our community members, Sister Mehnaz Naqib. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her, grant her forgiveness, and all those that have passed. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Again, there's a QR code here you can scan to get involved and to volunteer your time and your efforts, inshallah. We will have reflections on the Quran by Sheikh Walid Basyuni. He's the president of Al-Maghrib Institute. He's going to be visiting us next week, inshallah, for Jumaa Khutba and evening program. So I hope you'll attend and welcome Sheikh Walid, who's a great scholar. We have the medical clinic on May 11th, the MAPS Youth Retreat in July. We've started a basketball with Coach Aziz for ages 10 and older. We're also starting this Tuesday floor hockey at MAPS for boys and girls, ages 7 plus. And on April 27th, next Saturday, we are introducing home sciences. That's for ages 12 plus, Saturdays at 1 p.m. Jazakumullah khair. Please donate generously to support your masjid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.